Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about top 10 fish at the top of your tank, which are kind of hard to find if you know what you're looking for. You don't know what to ask for at the store so they could order them in for you. But if you're a freshwater fish enthusiast like we are, that's all we do. We're up to 1,000 videos at this point. Go ahead and subscribe. You'll get clued in on more stuff like this. So the number one fish I've got so far is going to be cheap, easy, would be the brown-tailed pencilfish. It hangs out at the top, kind of at that 45-degree angle. Got a mouth right up there, looking at the top always for little bugs to eat or flake food that you're gonna drop in. Get them in a group of 6 or more. You know, more the merrier because they look super cool, but they're not super active. They kind of just sit there, right? Feed them little foods. pH 7 and above, like maybe 6-8. Like don't go too far down, and also don't go too high. This is a community tank fish from the Amazon, and we want to mix it with other similar fish because they are so docile. Don't mix them with something that's going to beat on them. Don't put them with giant fish, and you don't want crazy high flow at the top either because they just kind of want to sit there and drift along, wait and eat little bugs. They usually cost between $2 to $3, so pretty cheap to get a school of them, and they really add that upper third of your aquarium. Like, what's that? Is that fish okay? What are they doing? And when you have a big group, people kind of notice, like, oh, they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. When it's one, well, is that guy supposed to be like that? But no, they're a great fish, one of my favorites, and cheap to boot. So go ask your store for them. Next up, we've got HATCHETFISH. Most stores probably have it. They look like the hatchet of a hammer, right? They got that body, that big stomach that is kind of wedge shape. And they surf around the top looking for food. Again, they want to eat flake food. They want to eat floating food. They want anything that's going to land on that top. And they can jump out for little bugs too. So they are huge jumpers. And so make sure you got a tight fitting lid, even back around the filter, all that kind of stuff. They're going to sail right out of there the next time a fruit fly flies by. It's going for a ride. pH 6.8 to 7.5 is their comfort zone. Temperatures in the normal tropical temperatures, 78, 76, 80, somewhere in there. Get them in a group of 6 or more. They can be a little bit finicky when you first get them, so I recommend quarantining. If they weren't getting fed very well at the store, they're having to compete with a lot of others. Sometimes they're a little malnourished, and they could be, I find that they are likely to get ick, especially when you bring them home. So quarantine tank, recommended. Tight fitting lid, also recommended. And small foods that float, and you'll have a good time. If you get a big group, one time I had like 30 of them, the big silver ones. And when they all school around and they move at once, if you have a really strong light, it actually makes like a flash in the room. So it can also be super cool or super annoying. We had it in our bedroom, super annoying. So, but very cool visual display in the right setting. Next up, we've got the Golden Wonder KILLIFISH. This is a killifish that gets yay big. It's got a big old mouth on it, so it can eat bigger things like small fish or bloodworms or brine shrimp, that kind of stuff. With the mouth turned up towards the surface, it likes to skim across there looking for stuff to eat, like bugs. If a bug falls in there, it's going to eat it. Being a killifish, known jumper, tight fitting lid, even back around that filter again, like absolutely tight. You leave a hole this big, a killifish is jumping out of it. It's only a matter of time, so really get it sealed up before you bring them home. They tend to be super duper hardy, super adaptive, like 6'6" to 8'6". I swear, it's like the widest range. The males have all the color, female not so much. They can be a little aggressive. You don't want like 4 males and 1 female. You want to get some cover up top, maybe some floating plants so they can weave in and out of them. But a really enjoyable fish, looks good. Usually pretty cheap, like $4 and under, $5 for sure and under usually. And just don't put them with tiny fish. Feed them some big meaty foods. And don't crank the heat up too much. Like they'll tolerate 80, 82, but really they want to be more like 76 to 78. So if you can run on the lower end of the spectrum because of the other fish you're running, keep it down a little bit. You'll get a longer longevity out of them as well. Next up, we've got the African butterfly fish. It's a crazy looking fish. Kind of looks like a miniature arowana that stays at the top of your tank. Big old trapdoor mouth like an arowana. So we can't put it with small fish. We have to put it with other mid-sized fish. Might be Congo tetras and that type of larger tetra. Usually in an aquarium at least 30 gallons or more. More the merrier. You can keep them in a group or you can keep them solo. That's one of the nice things about this top dweller. They do want things that float on the top. You can try flake food. You can try pellets. You can try freeze-dried krill. They pretty much eat all of that stuff. Give them a little bit of time. Give them a little bit of cover up there, maybe a floating leaf or some floating plants. They just want to sit there, watch stuff go in front of its mouth, and then yomp. pH is anywhere from 6.6 to 7.6 or so. And temperature, normal tropical ranges that you're keeping tropical fish in, anywhere from 76 to 82. Not too fussy other than making sure they don't get out-competed for food. If you've got a bunch of those Congo tetras and they're all eating all the food off the top and they never get to eat, that's a problem. So that's kind of why sometimes it helps to have some floating plants in there. You can put the food, kind of hide it in the floating plants. That African butterfly fish will eat it and then feed something over there. All the tetras and stuff, it's falling down and they eat it that way. Next up, we've got FURCATA rainbows. These things are like little pom-pom cheerleaders in your aquarium. They're gonna stay in the top third. They're very quick. They got blue eyes and these yellow fins that are always just dancing. And they're a great fish that should be in a school. They can be in pairs. You can breed them, but I recommend kind of a group of like 6. They're a little spendy, 12 bucks a piece, but they'll eat almost anything. Flake food, frozen food, little pellets, doesn't matter. They're not picky at all. Water parameters, I would say 6-8 and above, maybe even 7 and above. Like they do like harder water, but they tolerate such a wide range. Now, because they're so fast and they can eat, I wouldn't mix them with something like a guppy. They're gonna dominate the food. They can torment the guppies if they wanted to. They're gonna eat fry, all of those things. So instead, I would keep it with other fast things like rasboras and danios and tetras and that kind of planet community setup there. Temperatures, they can go cooler actually. They can go down to about 72. The hotter you keep them, the faster they're going to burn out. It's a fish that lives about 3 years depending on temperature. If you keep it low, more like 3 years. Keep it really hot, maybe you're only getting 18 months or 2 years out of it. But a great fish, and yellow is a hard color to come by in your aquarium. So get top third and yellow, that's a win-win. So all right, the next one I've got is not something you would expect, bettas. Now, yes, bettas will go all around the aquarium, but when set up correctly, they actually want to be in the top 1/3 of the water. So if you get yourself like a floating betta cave or one of those leaves that suction cups onto the side, or a bunch of floating plants or a big anubias with a big leaf up there where it can kind of sit and just watch the surface of the water, that's where they want to be. And so you can get a fish that will hang out up there by setting up the environment. Now, there's lots of other tutorial videos on how to take care of a betta and betta tank mates and that kind of stuff, but we're going to gloss over it real quick. Kind of 6-8 pH to 7-8 maybe, not too hard of water. Temperature 80 to 82 is where they do best. Meaty foods, frozen bloodworms, freeze-dried stuff, pellets, all of that'll work. Get them a perch or something to hang out in up top, and they're really going to thrive. Now, not every betta can live with every fish, and some have a really bad temperament and some don't. You're going to have a little bit of trial and error there, but in general, they are a top-dwelling fish and can work out great in your community aquarium. At the store, we used to always keep them only in community tanks. Now we keep so many of them, we separate them. We still do have some that live with fish just as a display to show people. Next up, we've got danios, and for the most part, I'm going to talk about like some of the common danios, zebra danios, leopard danios, blue leopard danios, longfin danios, like all those kind of cheaper $2 and under danios typically hang out at the top. They're a great kind of cooler water fish. They'll tolerate 78, but really they want it to be like 72 to 74, somewhere in there, very fast, schooling fish, at least groups of 6. They'll chase each other. There's no one's ever said danios aren't active enough. It's the opposite, super active. They'll eat almost anything. And so if you have an active aquarium that needs a little bit of spice up top, I recommend them. The leopards give you that kind of goldy, yellowy color. The blue leopards, nice blue color. I personally like the longfin because it slows them down a little bit because they are just so fast without that longfin. It's hard to see sometimes. As far as pH, anything almost, like 6-8 to 8. Like it's such a wide range there, and food is super wide too. So really easy to fish and cheap, and I think often overlooked. Next up, we've got the clown killifish. So another killie on the list. This one's a nano one. Doesn't get that big. Looks like a rocket. Stays up at the top, and without a tight fitting lid, will rocket right out of that aquarium. It'll find the smallest hole, and that $5 bill will be on the ground faster than you know it. One night, they'll all be on the ground. So make sure it's a tight fitting lid. You want to feed them small food, something like nano pellets, flake food, frozen cyclops, frozen baby brine, live baby brine, any of that kind of stuff. pH, anywhere, in my opinion, from 6.8 to 7.8 is a decent range. Now, if you can keep them a little bit cooler, they're going to live longer, easier to breed, I find. And that's at that 74, 76 temperature level. They'll go up higher, but just know that their metabolism's racing and time is a ticking. This is a fish that only lasts, in my experience, about 3 years or so. Even though it's called the annulatus, it isn't an annual killie like you heard of. They only live 1 year. They do live more than that, but they're not very long lived, like 5, 6, 7 years. They're more like 3 years, and they've only got X amount of time that will breed. Lots of floating plants can facilitate some of the breeding, but if you're mixing in a community tank, most of those eggs are going to get eaten by other fish. So I would just get yourself a group of like 6 or 8 of them. They got nice blue eyes. They're going to look at you from across the room, and they're always a gorgeous looking fish. I just wish they came in super size. They only come in that little dainty size, which in itself I can appreciate, but I would love it in, like, you know, the 2-hand burrito size. Next up, another Danio. What? This isn't the cheap Danios though. This is the orange hatchet Danio. So it's kind of got a body like a hatchet where it comes down a little bit, and it's orange, and it's got a little bit of striping on it, like vertical stripes. And this fish will hang out at the top. It's also very quick, but they're more in the $350 to $450 per fish range, a little more expensive. Groups of 6 or more definitely recommended. pH 6.8 to 7.8. Temperatures cooler again, like we mentioned earlier. And they'll eat a wide variety of foods. They just got that orange color, which is nice. And it is like a more eye-pleasing fish. And maybe you've done all the other Danios and you want something else. This would be filling that role there. And they're kind of fun to hunt for because they're not too common. All right, my last one is kind of a tricky one, the half-beak. Now, there are Celebes half-beaks, there are silver half-beaks, there's golden half-beaks, there's the forest half-beak. There's a lot of type of half-beaks. They're a live bear. They hang out up top. They'll eat their own fry. They'll eat smaller fish. They're a little bit predatory for sure, but they are super fun, and you can find them anywhere from like $3 to $20 each, depending on which type, how rare. Not all of them are freshwater, most are, but there's some brackish water ones that get sold as freshwater, like the forest one. But stick yourself to like Celebes or the silvers or the golds. And little foods floating, pH 6.8 to 7.8, lots of floating cover so they don't beat on each other or eat their babies. You want to make more because they're so cute. Now what I find is they're usually underfed coming from a store or a wholesaler. So I recommend quarantining. They usually have bacterial infections, antibiotics, because they've been beating on each other because they didn't have enough cover at the store or the wholesaler. And then just keep feeding them tons of floating foods. Get them to really get those bellies. A lot of times you're going to see a concave belly, and that's a bad sign. And you don't want to buy that. You want to see them eat before you buy them. Make sure they're still eating, and then you can bring them home, quarantine them, get them all fattened up, add them to your aquarium. Tight-fitting lid, again, they'll shoot right out of there because they're a top dweller. And from there, you'll have a live bear up top that's breeding, which is super cool and rare, and one of my favorites to play with when you got the time.